Hello YouTube and welcome to channel Anna Bella, and today I'm going to be doing my review of the new Elton John biopic, Rocketman. Now, Elton John, who was born as Reginald Dwight, was born in 1947. So, the film basically covers 7 decades. Well, actually it doesn't. It sort of stops just before during his rehab, and then it does the I'm Still Standing song. He's famous for Tiny Dancer, My Song, Rocketman, and I'm Still Standing, and he's done like 30 albums. He's written songs for Lulu. He's got a long-time collaborator called Bernie, and he and him write songs together. He was sent to LA to basically begin his career for touring and so forth. The film is presented as a musical because if it wasn't, it would be so depressing you'd want to slit your wrists. Because Elton John is homosexual. I know, shocking, not really. But during the 1940s, 1950s, when he grew up, it was not accepted, and he had a very interesting, if what strange, childhood, where I think possibly his mum got pregnant very young to a returned World War II soldier who was very cold. And this led Grandma to do quite a lot of the housework and looking after young Reginald. That's Elton Hercules John, or Sir Elton Hercules John, as is. Which kind of made Elton somebody who really requires love, but he couldn't really get it. And it's interesting that they had a whole song where every single person in his family was saying that they wanted love, but they just couldn't access it from each other. So it is interesting. It moves quite quickly. It's fun and funky, and it does have a nice beat. Taron Eddington, who plays Elton John, is very, very, very good. Good performance. Because it's kind of dealing with similar themes to Bohemian Rhapsody, yet it's not. Because the story of Elton John is quite sad in parts, but his music is wonderful, but it doesn't really get a chance to shine. You do hear little bars of things like Candle in the Wind, and I'm quite pleased that they actually didn't dwell on that, because in popular perception within Britain and the UK, Elton John is famous for playing at Princess Diana's funeral, Candle in the Wind, which is a song he wrote for Marilyn Monroe, and also his AIDS charity work, which is all very well and good. It really is, but that's not why he became famous, nor is it about his rock star stuff, which he kind of did when he was over in LA. He actually did quite a lot. He got sent over to LA with Bernard, who may or may not have been in a homosexual relationship. I couldn't quite work that out, even though Bernard said, I like you as a friend, but not in that way. And it also covered Elton's brief marriage to a very lovely woman, and it also covered the period where him and Bernard were living with this landlady and Elton was dating her. Yeah, it kind of skipped lots of bits, and it hinted at his drug. Well, no, you got the drug issue, you got the alcohol. You did get the fact that Elton is quite famous for having hissy fits, though you didn't really see him having a hissy fit over the loss of a sequin on something. But you didn't really need to, because that's not what it was about. It's basically about a rock star who's trying to find love in all the wrong places, when all he needed to do was find and accept himself as who he was. Which is kind of what the film is about, really. It's very, very good. But if you're looking for a straight story musical, it's not going to be that. They've had to gloss over some of the stuff, because obviously during the various decades that Elton's been alive, homosexuality has not been accepted. So you do get the use of the word fag, which in England has 2 meanings. 1, it could mean a cigarette that you smoke, and 2, it could mean a homosexual. Yeah, and you also, it's sort of like interesting how his mother knew that he was homosexual and just sort of said, yeah, I've always known, but you'll never be loved. not properly, which was really harsh. There was some really soul destroying, like emotional crunch movements, moments in this film. It is just really crunching. And I remember coming out and one girl going, I didn't think he would have such a sad life. And I says, there's a reason they made it a musical, because if they just play it straight, you'd be in buckets of tears. Over how sad it was. And then it was interesting because I went to see it on Saturday at 2:30 on my local Odeon, and it was interesting because it's certificate 15, for obvious reasons, because there's quite strong drug use throughout. I mean, Elton is fairly blatant. He said, I've done everything, I've been there, done everything, slept with everything that breathes. And it's actually quite amazing that Elton didn't actually get AIDS. But then when you actually look at the timeline of stuff, he was actually, during the 1980s, he was in therapy. Therapy saved him. So, yeah. It's quite interesting. He was in rehab during the 1980s for the majority of it. It's very, very interesting. I spoke to, there was this elderly lady, and she said, this was after the film in the toilets of all places, as you do. And she said, I remember seeing Elton John. I got a ticket for 50p. And I was like, 50p? 50p? Yes, 50p to go and see Elton John in the UK. That's just hilarious. Yes, but the majority of the people that did see this movie were older. It was quite surprising. There was some younger people, like in their 40s and 30s. Yeah, cough, cough. Yours truly. And then there was some sort of older teenagers, so 15 plus teenagers from 15 to about 18. And then there was a huge smattering of OAPs, which is really actually very good. Because when you consider Elton's age, he's actually 72 years old. That is not surprising. The film was very good. It was quite quick, actually. It did skip over his like home life and stuff. You got a good impression of it, and you felt that each character was given dignity and they were allowed to explain their situations, and you had real understanding and real care was taken. Because bear in mind, Elton John is still alive. The people that this film is about, they're still alive and breathing. It's not like Freddie Mercury, where alas he's dead and several others are, so they can present them in a more positive light than possibly they should have been. But having said that, Freddie never really offended anybody. Elton John did a bit with his hissy fits, particularly in the UK. He had a weird kind of relationship with the UK public, or at least management level, I think, which is why he got booted to LA in the first place with Bernie, because I think they thought that him and Bernie were actually together when they weren't. It was good that it was interesting that his psychopathic homosexual manager, or sociopathic manager, got dealt with. But then again, had he not hooked up with that guy, he wouldn't have been as famous. And the film does acknowledge that. Oh, Elton John still does have problems with his shopping habits, his shopping addiction. The ending of the film was actually quite pleasing because it showed like how he has turned his life around, his AIDS foundation, and his life with his partner and his two sons, Zachary and Elijah, and he's now retired from touring, which at 72, I think that's pretty fair. I love the fact that they had that picture of him standing there with all these shopping bags going, yee! That was quite cute. Like, Elton John has conquered all of his stuff, but he still has issues with shopping. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? I think overall, I would give the film a possible 4 out of 5. It was good, but you could tell that things were moving quite quickly, and if you didn't understand the context, you would have been a bit lost. I think they did a good version of explaining, like, of showing you 1970s LA. That was quite cool. And things like that. But because it was such a whirlwind, and because Elton wasn't actually sort of, I want to say conscious for the most part, but I don't want to say conscious, sort of like physically there, it did make you feel like that because Elton was there, yet he wasn't there because of all the drug use and everything. But it did do a good representation of his anger management issues. But I know people would have really liked to just see him go off on one and have like a hissy fit. And it's interesting that him and Bernie never had an argument. Whether that's true or not, I do not know. Yeah, it was a good film. Very, very nice. Very well done. But I did feel that perhaps his music could have been used a little bit more. I know that sounds a bit crazy and stuff, but you didn't sort of get the feeling of tying it all together. But maybe that's the point, because Elton was high most of the time. And it's not really, it is about his music, but it isn't about his music. It's more about discovery of self-love for self and overcoming the past, with like the two main themes that I took away from it. It's a good film. Good film. Go and see it. It's not, I don't think it's in the league like Bohemian Rhapsody is, because Elton John has become such a poster boy. And because he's so, I mean, he was friends with Princess Diana, and so ingrained, he didn't just leave or drop dead like Freddie Mercury did. So you've got this longevity. You've kind of like got two Eltons. You've got the young starting out Elton, and you've got the Elton we've got now, who's 72. So, and it's really difficult sort of putting those two together, because I know that Elton John has helped other celebrities like Robbie Williams with their drug use and various other things, and he's very good in that way and helping people cope with fame and fortune and how to manage it and how to deal with it, which I think is very, very honourable, actually. And he does come across as a good guy who just had an interesting and dysfunctional upbringing, really. But you can understand where he got his love for fashion from his mother. And you can, like, his grandmother was really important in sort of encouraging his piano. I mean, if Elton John hadn't played the piano, I don't know what would have happened. I really don't. It is good. And you can understand, like, his father's distance, because if his mum was able to twig that Elton was homosexual and not tell him and not realise, then his father must have twigged and must have felt awful, because during this time prejudice was so bad. So they were just sort of like, ooh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? But it was so much dysfunction in that family, you wouldn't believe. But Grandma was lovely. Yes, it was really good. Lovely outfits. They didn't sort of like dwell on the big moments, because that wasn't what the film was about. The film was about Elton's personal journey of self-love, if that makes sense, which was good. So yes, it was a good film. I'm glad that they wrote it as a musical, because I think if they'd played it straight, it would have been so offensive. It would have got an 18 rating, which is interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, you can do a film about Freddie Mercury and Bohemian Rhapsody and cover similar issues, and that can be a 12A, and that's fine. But Elton isn't. But then again, Freddie Mercury didn't have the drug use, nor did he have the cold home life. Because Freddie Mercury, or Farouk Balsara, he had a very stable home life. He was loved, he was valued. Even if he did hide homosexuality from them, he was able to sort of come out to them in a way that was acceptable, and they were like, oh, you're friends, that's good, it's always good to have friends. So they knew, but they were discreet, if that makes sense. They just kept it under their hat. Whereas Elton's, yeah, some very interesting relations. Families are odd, aren't they? Anyway, check out the film. It is very, very good. Some really good performances from Jamie Bell as well, surprisingly. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5. It was fun. At times, yeah, it really did make you go, ooh. Yeah, it is a bit of an emotional roller coaster, this one, or an emotional vacuum, I would say. Hope you enjoyed this review. Please like, comment and subscribe, and let me know what you thought about Rocketman below in the comments below. Thank you for the support. Oh yes, and just say thank you to everybody, because we're now at 2K. So Keep the support coming, and thank you so much for helping me get there. Bye.